you want to start? CCAC, Batesville, for decades before that. Here I am. Multiple decades, yes.
Leslie Burns, CCAC, lived in Crozet for about 8 years, 9 years.
Doug Bates, CCAC, not that long.
I said my bit.
Martin Violet, CCAC, the wrong side of 64, almost 2 decades.
Wrong side of the tracks.
I'm Loach, CCAC, live off John and Gap Road. Like McDean, I'm a decades guy.
Mike Kunkel, CCAC, lived in Quarry Farm 7+ years, and a plug to sign that sheet when it goes around. You're here.
There are 2 birds with 1 stone. Dean Eliason, CCAC, Western Ridge, been here, I think, 11, 13.
Allie Pesh, CCAC, born here. Born and raised. Born and raised.
Ann Allen, Board Supervisor. Jenny Moore, Planning Commission. Also born. Yeah. I live in Rochester, sorry.
Kim Gunther, CCAC, live off John Gap Road, and I've been there almost 20.
Sean Bird, CCAC, live off of St. George, and been about 2 years.
Phil Best, CCAC, about 3 minutes. I live in
Crozet.
Western Ridge. Maybe as long as we can.
Process of which I live 250, somewhere close to the development area. Yeah, I've been in Crozet 30 years.
And can we continue with guests, visitors?
Go ahead.
Ray Grant, moved here about a year and a half, 3 months ago, Old Trail, from Northern Virginia, retired.
Frank Cerrone, HOA at Old Trail.
Bob Rocheers, live in Old Trail, been here about 2 years.
Charlie Bendig, Old Trail, been here 4 years.
Brenda Plants, former CCAC member, 40 years.
Pat Groot, I'm a volunteer with DCI.
Jason Crutchfield, 10 years, Erica Haskins, 15.
I'm Erica Haskins.
Bill Schrader, formerly CCAC, Stonegate Homeowners Association, 14 years.
Emily Kilroy, I'm a city girl. I work for the county.
Dave Brockman, I'm with Old Trail, been there about 5 years.
Sorrel Stoke, Old Trail, and almost 10 years.
And I'm John Stoke, I'm with her.
I'm Danny Weislong, I live on St. George, been here like 4 or 5 years.
Mark Graham, I'm the Director of Albemarle County Community Development.
Patsy Crosby, I've been here all my life.
Jim Crosby, Crozet today, been here since 1972, you do the math.
Andrew Newbold, Albemarle County Zoning.
Phil Fritz, Albemarle County Community Development.
Good crowd. Well, listen, welcome everybody. And again, good to have everybody here. Agenda went around over the weekend, and then we had a revision based on an addition request from the DCI folks to be added. Any other comments, suggestions on the agenda? You okay with it as is? All right, good.
Motion to
Thank you. Second? All in favor? Good. Agenda passes. Might sit around meeting notes. Today, folks had a chance to look at them from the last, no, it's great. Thank you for getting them out. From the last meeting, folks get a chance to review, and if so, do I have a motion to approve minutes from last month?
Second that minutes.
First and second, all in favor? Aye. Motion's granted, minutes approved as written. So we got a good agenda, with a lot to cover today. The middle part of the project update, some of those are really short and sweet. And we were going to start with Joe Higgins to talk about the Storage Station SP amendment, but I don't know if Joe is...
She is just a few minutes away.
Okay, sure. So no worries based on that. I'd say let's just jump into item number 4, if that's okay with everybody. We'll do some of the project updates first and then come back to Joe when she gets here. Is that okay with everybody? On the NIFI, NIFI, however, whatever acronym we want to use, just a real quick update. I think you saw it in the emails that went around, but the board did approve the project request and suggestion for funding of the Crozet Square streetscape. Emily, I'm putting you on the spot. Anything else you want to add to that as far as anything?
Only that, as you know, the Square project is part of a revenue sharing agreement application that was submitted on November 1st. The $200,000 that the board approved for Crozet through NIFI will be a contribution towards the required local match. The required local match on the revenue sharing program is 50-50. So other local government dollars will sort of make up the balance of that match if awarded. And Kevin expects to hear back from VDOT in the May timeframe, and we'll let you know as soon as we hear what the next steps are on that.
So yeah, I think a lot of it's going to be waiting to hear about the VDOT funding. I'll stay in touch with Kevin and Jack just as far as, you know, I don't know how much you're going to progress with design work until we hear VDOT funding or whether that's going to continue to progress. But again, I'll try to stay in touch with them on that and keep folks appraised of that. Anything else on that? I guess the other one, the second item, Barnes Lumber rezoning. Again, there was an email that went around on that one. Elaine Eccles had sent me a brief update last week, and as we all know, Frank Stoner from Milestone was in here last month, gave sort of an update on the rezoning. He submitted a request for deferral of that decision. There was a county timeline that was requiring that he was going to have to be in front of the Planning Commission. Jenny, help me out. This month? By December. He's still working on a couple of the necessary easements to support his plan. And I think he feels like he's close to getting those. Wants to finish that so he doesn't have to deal with an alternative plan that would be required if those easements didn't come in to support his application. So he requested a deferral. It's up to a 1-year deferral. I think Frank's expectation is he's not going to need that long. He would hope to be back here, I think, first quarter, second quarter at the latest. When I say back here, headed towards the Planning Commission. So initially, I was intending that we'd spend some time to talk about, hey, what do people think about that proposal? You know, does the CCAC want to say anything to the Planning Commission or the board about it? I'm suggesting, again, open a discussion, that we might just wait until he, you know, if you will, is headed back towards the Planning Commission and until we have the staff report on that project. That's my suggestion, but again, open for folks' discussion if we want to do it differently.
I think that makes sense.
Right, so rather than,
I'm drawing a blank, but I think the deferral already was voted on, but I may be wrong. If not, then it's coming up on
yeah, I thought it was
the
coming
planning
up.
agenda.
I thought it's coming up, but
Feel very well.
Yeah.
One thing that is going to be able to be down is approval for some of the real technical things from VDOT, from the upper levels of the VDOT design people who were not, haven't signed off on various parts of it yet, whereas their local people, a couple other people have said, sure, this sounds great. Apparently there's some other blessings that have to happen, which we'll at least be able to get done in the next interval while all the other things are going on.
So anything else on Barnes? Are we good with that? Again, we'll be back, and that'll be back on the agenda once Frank is towards planning commission, and we have staff. Last one, just as far as updates, we also spent a fair chunk of time last meeting with the county, reviewing the Western Park master plan. And when we had two requests. One, wanted to spend some time just to follow up for this group to talk about, okay, what do we think about what we heard? And do we want to say anything about that or not? Do we as a CCAC have an opinion? So I think that's the time that we have now. Tom, I know you had some thoughts you wanted to share, but I'm just opening it up generally.
My question is, I'm not even sure how we got to the point where we had that last meeting. Actually, there was no vote in the CCAC, as far as I know, to invite the county to do anything. The park plan as it stands now is part of the master planning process that we did last time around. We spent a significant amount of time and effort in getting that plan. It's not that I don't mind looking at reviewing the plan, but it seems to me that the first step would have been to start with the current plan that was part of an entire community input in developing. So I was a bit befuddled about how the county comes in and says, well, we're going to review this, but we don't have, we're not starting with the plan. We're essentially somehow starting with a new plan. The only reference that I think that we had in the CCAC was regard to the NIFTY money and how that would be spent. Again, I would go back and say, as far as process-wise, it would seem to me that what you do is you start with the old plan and then you work yourself into a new plan if, in fact, the community thinks it's needed. As far as the meeting, I don't even know where this thing with the Boy Scouts came in. I don't think, again, maybe I missed the meeting and it was voted in by the CCAC to discuss it, having a Boy Scout building brought in there. And to me, at least at that level, the Boy Scouts at a regional level is essentially a commercial enterprise. What he's talking about, and he's talking about leasing space and all the rest of this. This was, in fact, a community park. As a matter of fact, I think it was, if you looked in the original Gazette article, there was specific, references from Will Riley, who developed the design of the park, that it was to be a community park. So again, I'm not sure, if the idea is that the CCAC is supposed to lead, and monitor the master plan, then we surely missed out on that when it came to the Western Park. To me, it would be the same as if the county community development turned around and said, well, it's been a while since we looked at the growth areas, so let's have a meeting. We'll break out into small groups and see where we can put the new developments. Without going through the process of looking at the original plan first. That's my objection to it.
I'll fill in a couple of gaps. First of all, there was great interest developed over the last year from folks in Western Park who were seeing a lot of houses, a lot of apartments where the original rezoning in 2004-2005 did not require each of those blocks, like the big apartment complex, to have its own recreational spaces. That was part of the rezoning plan, and Mark and Bill and Frank can come on about that. But the emphasis was that those kids could go to the playground at Western Park for their playtime. But the fact that the park was sitting there unfunded and undeveloped was starting to get people agitated, and I agree with them. So they have been raising this issue quite a lot. What's happening with Western Park? Parks and Rec felt that having had 10 years of time elapsed, and also changes from FEMA and the way the land could be used, as described in the current plan, that they wanted to have a discussion about it to see, get feedback from the community about if everybody was still very affirmative to what the elements at least that were listed there, with the multiple small pavilions, the one very, very large pavilion, and to tell people that the multiple soccer fields that originally had been listed were not going to happen because they can't. So that was the basis of the meeting. I think starting with all the maps from the original master plan, not the master plan, the original Western Park study, was the beginning of the discussion. And then people kicked in with ideas David Anholt is putting those, taking into mental account all of those things that he heard during the presentation, and we'll be having some ideas for people to think about to come back to the group as a whole. But until that happens, I'm not sure, unless people want to, who weren't at the meeting, want to leave some thought or other, I think it might be best to wait until we see what the first round of report is. But this was a Parks and Rec procedure, because they don't want to go off and try to be raising the $6 million that was the cost of the original plan if the $2 million version is really what the community wants. And so, because the $6 million plan isn't going to happen right away. I mean, it's just not. So that, and I think the only thing that I knew about the other potential of the partnership was, public-private partnership was to be able to provide some resources in which to contribute to the development of the park overall in whatever the community plan was. So I will stop there and let other
I just responded with two comments. One is, again, I'm not saying that the plan shouldn't be changed or couldn't be changed. I'm saying the procedure should have said we should have started with the plan, and we should have started with the current plan, see what impact the new regulations would have had on it, and then gotten input in, at least from the CCAC. I don't know how many of these members have ever even seen it. And two, as far as the community input, what you saw was what I don't think, from the first master plan when we did it, and we literally had hundreds of people come into those master plan meetings when we did them last time, versus one meeting essentially with the bulk of the people from Old Trail. Again, I go back, this is supposed to be a community park. I'm complaining about the way it was done, the process that was done, and the fact that there was no review of the original plan to see. Maybe people would have liked that. Maybe we could have come out with a $2 million version. And as a matter of fact, while we're on the $6 million, the $6 million for that park was the quid pro quo from the county for us, from this community, to accept Old Trail and go from not the original 800 or 900 homes that we were told we were going to get to the 1,200 homes that were in the original plan, to the 2,400 homes that were eventually approved. That is what we were getting for us accepting 2,400 homes. So if what I'm hearing now is the county says, well, now it's too expensive, well, then fine, let's go back to the county and lower the density in Old Trail, 1,200 or back to the 800 and stop there. You know what I mean? I understand the situation, but it's just, not that I don't think we can't or shouldn't change it. It's just that I wasn't very happy with the process, and and to completely circumvent, the current plan for me was a mistake. That's my say. I'll leave it at that.
And it's appendix to the Crozet master plan, the western part. It's not part of the adopted ordinance. So Parks and Rec were told by the legal that they did not have to go to a master plan revision process in order to make changes to it.
I don't think they should, but that's what we're talking about. Was the part of the master planning process that we did last time we did the master plan update? And the answer to that is assuredly yes. So, for them to turn around and say, well, we can bypass that because it really wasn't included in the master plan is to me a way to obfuscate what they should have done.
Well, I think this is the very first meeting. There'll be lots more discussions as more information comes forward.
When will they release survey results of that little survey about
I don't have any update from the department about that process, but I think hopefully there's going to be some feedback in December.
Any other comments, thoughts?
There was, I thought on my table anyway, there was an original.
There were big maps all over.
There were plans there that you could see.
I didn't see the original.
So I don't know if they were at every table, but.
We're at my table.
There was a big poster about this big.
So.
I didn't see it at the meeting. I have to say, I didn't see it. I don't think a lot of people saw it.
But I think the interesting thing for me was just to get a perspective of now how people see that being used now as opposed to a long time ago. And I do imagine there's going to be a lot more meetings, but I, as a trail lover, was really encouraged to see that a lot of people were into sort of the natural aspect of that space rather than something that's.
Well, there's no way to, I mean, so much of it is unbuildable. Of course, it's gonna be mostly natural space, because it's like wetlands. I mean, so.
Well, that's a huge change from the master, from the original plan, which was several full-size fields, which would have required a huge cost, but also filling in the wetlands and that kind of thing, which are not going to happen. We've learned a lot. We have a lot more to learn.
Any other comments,
I
thoughts?
think in our roundtable, we did not have an image of the plan, and some people mentioned that they had tried to go and look at the plan online where they had previously had been, and it was no longer available. So I don't know that that's true, that's just what I heard in our roundtable discussion. So I would suggest that if it can be available, because I do think it's a place, even if it can't be the same, it is something that money was spent on, it's a building. It's
Well,
a
I
starting
just-
point for discussion, so it shouldn't be pulled or.
It could have easily been
unavailable.
in David Animal's discussion, and he could have said a few things about his concerns with it, I mean, like, so that would have helped me. And not feel like you're starting over by yourself.
I think I heard interest in our group from people who wanted to be able to go and find it and look at what was planned previously.
So just one thought, in addition to that, to bring something else into it, is that I think that the county unfortunately has taken a position of catch-up, and we've sort of allowed that by not pressing issues, because there's countless numbers of things now that are starting to stack up, that where they obligated or should obligate themselves to developing something, whether it's a park, infrastructure. For example, now that traffic is what it is in Crozet, there is no infrastructure to support what we have, much less what's proposed. And at what point do we stop deferring to some later date, just like we did with the park, to start to push the issue of we need to catch up, and actually we should really be ahead. We should have infrastructure in place to support the community that we have. And right now, we're upside down on that particular issue. So I don't think if there's anything that this committee should recommend to the county is a review of the infrastructure that supports the Crozet area, and to aggressively entertain ideas to catch up with the infrastructure development so that it's not so miserable, to drive through Crozet now. And you don't have, you have all these developments they were relying on the park to be their area, and so we push that back, and they don't have that, the kids there they don't have that to go to. So I think this is a multifaceted issue, but it is on the same vein of we're behind.
Are you viewing that as a separate exercise, or in one way what you're saying is the master plan update of?
Well, it's not the master plan, it's just following through with your obligation to the community of developing it.
Well, one thing we should do is ask for a resolution that we ask the county with some of the surplus to fund an update of the Crozet master plan, where those things could be taken into consideration. We're 3 years overdue for our master plan update now. So at least if we do that and there is funding for the master plan, those things, i.e., infrastructure, will be looked at and can be quantified during that time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of folks here, so if anybody feels like I'm out of line saying we don't have infrastructure support, we have, please speak up. But, I think that's a priority for our community right now. Especially if we do the downtown development and everything else that we're looking at pushing forward at light speed. We just don't have, we're going to have all this just right stuff, and everything around it isn't going to be there to support it.
I agree.
Right? I had to be backed up in traffic from Charlottesville to the 240
Oh, yeah.
split one day at 8:30 in the morning, and then you'll appreciate the conversation that we're having, because that's an everyday thing. It's hard.
So I guess I'm just bringing it back a little bit to Western Park, and I don't need to.
No, you should.
That's a really
what's on the
important
agenda,
point.
but-
I guess I'm just curious, anything else on Western Park, and on what we heard last week, and how people feel, things? I guess the two things that I would lob in, just because I had a couple people make some comments. One similar on process, not so much the technical process issues that you were bringing up, but just more the, hey, we had a plan, why don't we talk more about what the plan is and what might change from there? So that was one comment I received on the process that was done. I guess one suggestion I would have going forward is, again, maybe encourage staff to, in whatever subsequent meeting there is or whatever additional work, is that anything new gets couched in terms of what was the prior plan and why, and if there are changes being suggested from that, well, why? It seems like, again, going back to the plan that was spent a lot of time, would be really good, to couch any changes in terms of justifying, well, why are we changing particular elements? That's my one suggestion. The other comment I had heard from a number of people, both right after the meeting and more recently, is the whole proposal from the Boy Scouts. I think people thought was totally not appropriate for Western Park. And giving up that much of the prime buildable space to a private entity, while there's maybe some synergies there in terms of meeting space and such, I think people felt that generally just did not feel right, and the notion of camping in that park and such just didn't feel like it remotely fit with what we might be trying to do with Western Park. Again, those are comments I received, I just wanted to ask along.
So what did happen to that money, the quid pro quo money from Old Trail?
The money that was provided as part of the rezoning was paid for the development of the Western Park plan.
Could we spend 2 minutes, sort of, someone who was around at the time, for us who are new to the community, I have no sense of the history of Old Trail and what deals were struck and the quid pro quos and how it's evolved or has not evolved. I don't know who would be the appropriate person, but for us to understand where we should be now, maybe we should go back and have an understanding of the context in which all this came about. To see if, I mean, I'm sitting here wondering, has Old Trail dropped the ball somehow? Has the county dropped the ball? And who should we be sort of taking to task on the fact that Western Park is not where it should be?
Well, you can take the board to task for the 5 years of the recession because we didn't build anything except bricks and mortar for health and safety issues in public safety, period. So that was $100 million of capital projects that didn't go anywhere. And that's part of that catching up that Constance was talking about. Is that we are in a really, really deep hole and clawing our way out a little bit at a time, which is why what investments were made, as I said, for those health and safety things, and there's a long, long list of quality of life things that have been below the funding line as far as the available borrowing ability and or cash for the budget for those things. But I think the idea of having people, because I was on board then, and having someone in the know, whether it's Bill or Mark or both, to come when there can be organized to do that and do a little summary for everybody would be very useful.
Yeah, and that was going to be my suggestion, rather than trying to do that in 2 minutes on the fly. I think it's a really important thing.
I'd love to see the calculations, how we went from 800 to 1,200 in the master plan to 2,400 and how that was arrived at. But it was voted on, not when Ann was here, by the way. So that vote went,
Well, that was being the minutes of the rezoning public hearing, because that's when all that happened.
Right.
But anyway, it's back down now to 1,200 because of the changes that were made and the amendments made to the rezoning. So that at least should be a little comfort.
I mean, one of the things you have to realize, this library that you're sitting in, the original request went from the community to the county, was in 1984, was the original request for the improvement of the library, because the library itself in 84 was undersized then. So that's how long it took us to get a library. So,
Yeah, or the widening of John Step Road, I mean,
Right, same.
that was.
But I think one of the things we could do is maybe, if there is interest in looking at the old plans, maybe to invite Will Riley, who did the plan, who's local, to come in and review it for us.
And you're saying the Old Trail plans?
Yeah, that's what he did.
I think it's a good suggestion. Again, just trying to bring this discussion to a close. I mean, I've got good suggestions about going back and looking at that Old Trail history and Western Park history, you know, relooking at infrastructure. I don't think we should try to do that on the fly, so we'll come back to that. Anything else specifically in terms of this discussion on
I was confused, just really quickly, I was also confused about the Boy Scouts presentation and how they got that much of the meeting time. Kind of surprised me. It was a little weird.
Well,
it was it on the agenda?
Yes, it was.
When did it get on the agenda? It was just weird to make sure
Well,
that happened.
this was the Parks and Rec meeting. That was
what they did too.
This was the Parks and Rec meeting that was hosted by the CCAC because it's a meeting at which people are used to coming, and it was a great way to have the maximum amount of people be able to hear the presentation.
Okay.
Secondly, this was an idea that had been offered. It's one of those, you're doomed either way, because if it had been canned by somebody else and then people had never gotten a chance to hear it and they would have thought it was a good idea, then that would be criticized. So I understand people may not, and I don't have any more information than what we heard right there. I think there could have been more presented, but the decision was made to just offer the little idea and then come back, invite it back. If invited back, then come back with more details at another time. So, there we are.
and I'll make sure Parks and Rec folks see these comments and see our minutes so that, any of the stuff that we're raising, that's brought to their attention.
And I sure don't know what happened to the plan because I've been looking for it just now and it was on there.
I couldn't find it, I wanted to put it in the Gazette and I couldn't find it, so.
Two things, you might request Parks and Rec read the Crozet master plan before they come back. I'm very serious. Based on comments, I don't think they knew it existed or read the plan. And second, this is not directed at Ann, but at the county, but since Ann brought it up, I'll bring it up. We cannot use the crutch anymore of 2008. That's gone. The county can quit using 2008 as an excuse for things not being done. It's time to move on. It's time to build the infrastructure we need in Crozet. I don't want to hear 2008 from Albemarle County again.
Second.
Sounded like a motion, but I don't think it was.
And everything that Tom said is fact on the trade-off for building the park and the trade-off of the population. So it sounded like I'm going after the county, and I'm really not, but the longer the county can put off doing the work, the more the plan can be said is out of date. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Anything
Build
else?
the park.
Thanks, Bill. Anything else? All right, thanks. With that, let's jump back up, and Joe Higgins is here representing the storage station to talk about their SP amendment request. Joe?
Where is the right?
As you
At
wish.
the front?
Sure.
Okay. Sorry.
Are you able to use the?
There's no parking here, you have to park right there.
Yeah, we have an issue.
Yeah, let me just.
Yes. No worries.
Good evening. David already introduced me. My name is Joe Higgins, and I'm a consultant. I do have, in case anybody after this wants to see it, I have the storage station approved site plan, which is for the development that's currently existing. So I do have that with me if anybody would like to see it. Thank you for allowing me this time to present some information. I'm trying to make it straightforward as possible. The storage station now operates under the title the Business Legacy Markets. It's been around for a while, so I'm sure I didn't bring anything to show the location. I'm assuming everybody knows where it's located. My tenure, for a lot of people that are new here, is I did serve on the Planning Commission for 5 years under the previous supervisor, Dave Wyant. I was also the previous Director of Engineering and Public Works at Albemarle County, and actually when the CCAC was formed, I was a member of the CCAC in its first formation and was on it as the Planning Commissioner appointment. So I've been on both sides of many of these issues, and most of the time it's really about compliance because the county has a complicated process. Michelle Sprouse is here. She's actually the owner, the property owner. And I've been involved since day one because of the complexities of what it takes to get a site plan and a development approved in Albemarle County. Although this property has been zoned since prior to 1980 when the comprehensive plan was adopted. It is zoned highway commercial. So we started this process, just to give you a brief history, in 2008. Site plan was submitted to develop the property for office and convenience store with gas pump canopies. During that process, we were in about 5 months, when it was decided that we need to submit water usage data, because it is served by a well. And in the county ordinance under highway commercial, if you have a use, and there are various uses allowed by right, including convenience store, accessory gas pumps, office, and those sorts of things. But if the use is expected to exceed more than 400 gallons per acre per day, then it falls under the category requiring special use permit. These would only be for private systems. If you're on public water, it doesn't apply at all. The uses go back to the by right uses. So, during that process, we submitted water analysis. The key issue was we had to analyze and project at what volume of water the development would require. At that time, we projected it would use about half of what was allowed by right. So by right, 4.06 acres times 400 gallons per day is 1,624 gallons per day. We projected, after analyzing 8 other locations of various sizes, much larger sizes by the way, that we would fall in a category of about half of that. But it was our projections. Some people called it guesses. The only way to actually prove what you'll use with water is to be open with a water meter to collect the data and then prove what your water usage is. So our plan was always to get the store open, basically, prove the water usage, and be very sure at that point and expand it. We actually had proposed a phase 2 on the plan. It was removed because no one wanted to have an implied approval, which is typically what happens, and we did do that. So we had no choice when it was decided we needed a special use permit, so we submitted it for 1 gallon of water. Okay, what that means is the 624 is by right, so to even have a permit, you have to exceed that, so we asked for 1 gallon to enable it, not because we thought we needed it, but it was required. We were stuck in the process for quite some time. The store owner, of course, has now 20 years, some years experience, so he knew how much water he would use. And with the projections we had, we thought we were solid, but we proceeded with a special use permit. It was approved in 2010 with 9 conditions. On 4.06 acres, we're using about 1.5 acres of the 4.06, but there are 9 conditions. It's well documented in the county attorneys, I don't know if you all know this, but there's a document called the Albemarle County Land Use Law Handbook. I do have, and I can hand out, about 5 pages out of the law handbook that pertains specifically. It's section 12, it's available online. It's actually published, this publication was June 2017, so it's very recent. And Mr. Kampner, the current county attorney, obviously updated this substantially since the last time I had seen it. Of the 9 conditions that were imposed, just to let you know, there's key principles to know about special use permits. And the reason I think this is important is I was a member of the CCAC and I worked at the county, so I have maybe a very broad knowledge of the requirements. But it's really important when you're looking at development, whether it's this one or any, is to understand the rules, how they're applied, what compliance means, if the development fits in those rules and that sort of thing. Well, in this particular case, the particular things that apply is, in this case, the special use permit was for water. That is the use. So if there's any impacts generated by using that 1 gallon in this case, the conditions and this is the way it's worded, conditions must reasonably relate to the impacts to be addressed, and the extent of the conditions must be roughly proportional to the impacts. Now, it doesn't say may, it says must. The other key thing is that uses allowed by special use permit are considered to have potentially greater impact than those allowed as a matter of by right. But in our case, it's 1 gallon. Now, if we had asked for 5,000 gallons and we couldn't operate within the by right, again, substantially different. And probably the other thing is the special use permits must be evaluated under reasonable standards based on zoning principles. And understanding zoning principles is pretty important. So that's the background. We have 9 conditions. I also have a handout with the conditions that were put on the special use permit by the Board of Supervisors. So we opened the store in 2014. We actually came in about 12 months later to request, well, we came in almost immediately to request to amend the permit at that time. And staff, very knowledgeable, said, well, first of all, you've got startup, you're going to use less water, then you'll have to get a period of at least a year to show the 4 seasons. So we started into that, and after startup and a year of operation, we have now proven the water use for what is built to date. We have 2 years of solid water data. It's proven that our average usage is 250 gallons per day. Now, we have a peak usage. There's 1 week in that 2-year period where the store used 383 gallons a day. So that's peak. That's 24% of what's allowed by right on the site. So in perspective, no impact, and we're using about 24%. So this application that's been submitted to the board, of which to staff, and I also have it in a notebook, and it's available. Bill Fritz is here. He's the staff contact if you have any questions or want to see it specifically. It's to amend only 2 of the conditions. And I will, in the handout, I also have the water use data. It has it by period. It has the analysis and what the average is, and you'll see what the peak is because that's the largest number. There's a couple things that I want to make really clear because this question always comes up. How do you figure out how much water has been used? The water meter reads in gallons. The water meter is a water meter that's the same used by all people that have public water. The Albemarle County Service Authority, it's a Sensa meter. It's sealed. It cannot be tampered. It cannot be turned. If it breaks, it has to be replaced. There's no way to change it or fix it. And it's an accumulative reading. So that means there's not someone that turns it and reads it and then resets it. It's always accumulation. So there's no way to cover up or deny over a certain period what the change in the meter says. And that's the standard in the industry, so it's not tamperable. That's where I had in here, can water meters be fudged or altered? It cannot. The meter is logged in once a week, and the reason why is all the data that we use for comparison is once a month, because everybody pays a monthly water bill. The Service Authority reads water meters monthly, and it's standard in the industry. We read it weekly and divide by 7, which is 4 times more accurate than reading it monthly and dividing by 30. But the only data you can compare to is data that's accumulated monthly. There's some systems that actually do it every other month now because it saves money to do that. And we actually were questioning about what if you read the meter daily, would it be any different? So we have submitted some daily, couple months of even daily, and it proves that the weekly is as accurate and daily doesn't make it any more accurate. So I have a handout with that information. I also have the letter that has the 9 conditions and the submittal of altering the couple conditions that we want to submit. And then I have a picture. I have the engineer's letter about this having very little effect on the water, if any, water usage. And also one other picture, which is just of a typical gas pump that we would like permission to install versus what we have been limited to do. So let me just hit on the 2 things because there's no change to the site plan proposed. There was a lot of anxiety. We're not expanding the footprint of the building. We're not expanding the canopies. There's no change to the site plan proposed. This really has to do with operational things. So right now we have 2 conditions that have impacted the operation. One is number 5, and it currently allows the store to operate for 16 hours per day. Now, it doesn't specify a time frame. very honestly, the store could operate from 11 a.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning. It could operate through the night, which is 16 hours. It could operate from midnight to 6 p.m. It doesn't say when it doesn't limit when it operates, it just limits how many hours. What we've proposed is we want to allow 4 additional hours, but we're actually specifying that it would be closed in the period of time between 12:30 and 4:30 in the middle of the night. Now, why is that important? Well, there's another condition, number 8, that restricts customer parking during those same hours. So this would be consistent. Now, this does not mean, it's a misnomer to think, that means the store will stay open for 20 hours. Adding 4 to 16 is 20. Well, right now, the store doesn't stay open in the night by preference. But there are some limitations that are quite notable. Right now, the cooking staff arrive before 6. They open at 6. They can't unlock the door until 6. So you actually got staff in the building, but you can't open the doors and let them buy pre-made food items or drinks. So that's kind of a monetary thing. The other thing is they close at 10. They lock the door, and anybody in the store, of course, they can finish their purchase and leave the store. But sometimes on weekends, particularly, there's a need to stay open until maybe 10:30. Now, on the other hand, is sometimes they would close at 9. But because of another complication, if they close at 9, then the pumps have to be cut off, and then someone has to come back and turn the pumps off if they leave them on. So it's just become an operational difficulty. The change, now I'm going to look at this in worst case. All the other convenience stores, by the way, operate, different hours. When the customers are there, they're open. When the customers are not, they're closed. So we're not asking or promising to stay open for 4 more hours. It's just allow the flexibility to maybe open a little bit earlier and on certain occasions to open a little bit later. So from a water perspective, which the special use permit is only about water, no matter how people discuss or reflect upon it, the conditions are related to water use. So if the store operates 16 hours and in a peak time uses 383 gallons, if you divide the hours by 16 and then multiply by 20, assuming the water stays in the same peak usage even when it's later at night or earlier in the morning, the water volume would be projected and mathematically correct to say 478 gallons a day. That's only 29% of what's allowed by right. 29 as opposed to the 100%. So a part of this too, and this is another complicated zoning decision that was made, but the pumps have always, in the stores that the Sprouses have operated, and the stores that are locally operating, always have credit card sales after hours. If someone gets off the interstate in the middle of the night, they can go and if they have a credit card, they can buy fuel. If the pump is open past the store closing, not one drop of water can be used because the only water available is inside the store and the restroom and the sink. So we've kind of got want to get a clarification on that. So we've asked that the pumps can operate without restriction, which means they would stay on just for credit card sales, like the other convenience stores in the neighborhood. There's no impact to water use to do that. Then the second condition that we've asked to modify is the number 6. We have 9 fuel pumps were approved, and we have 9 on the site right now. And what those are is there's 4 under the front canopy, there's 2 in the back for the small canopy, which is a diesel and an off-road diesel. Now, admittedly, there's very much limited use to the off-road diesel. That's only contractors that have a tank on the back or a tractor. It's got dye. If you put it in your vehicle, you'll get a ticket, a very serious one. So, and then the last one is the kerosene pump, which is at the corner of the building. What we're asking for is 2 additional pumps. No change to the canopy. They would be under the front canopy. And the other modification is to make the language more simple, because when they originally approved it, it's a very complicated, long sentences that talk about numbers of nozzles on pumps and pumps. And it's kind of confusing. We actually had to go through quite a bit to get our pumps approved. But and it also, in our condition, yes, sir?
Can I ask, it's really hard to follow which conditions and what you're talking about, the modifications. Do you have these handouts that we can look at while we're doing it? Because I can't follow.
Are these diesel pumps?
Okay, can you want hand? I don't know if I have one for every.
Are these diesel pumps you're talking about?
Okay, the right now there's a total of
2 additional.
Excuse me. That right now we have a total of 7. We're asking for 2 to get a total of 9.
To what? Diesel?
No.
Well, let me finish. Okay, under the front canopy, there's 4 pumps now that only deliver gasoline. Now, the reason that they're limited to gasoline is that the way the condition was worded, it limits it to 1 nozzle on each side of the pump. Well, and you all know, and you've probably seen this very often and not even realized it, but in order to serve biodiesel to the Volvos, Mercedes, Hyundais, pickup trucks, or whatever, you have to have 2 hoses. The industry has safety regulations about the different rubbers, and only gasoline can run through one type, and biodiesel or alternative fuels under it. So this is called dispenser for alternative fuels, and it has 2. Well, the wording of the condition even calls out alternative fuels allowed, but by limiting the nozzles, you're only allowed 1 nozzle on each side. So by allowing 2 nozzles, it doesn't change the number of cars you can serve, but it's just the language precluded the industry. We can't buy one with 1 nozzle to serve a Mercedes, Volvo, or now Hyundai or Audi. And there's a lot of those in Crozet, or a pickup truck. So those folks have to go back to the single pump in the back where the trucks fill up. Now, we'll have less people going to that pump if they can have it under the front canopy. So again, the two additional pumps we're requesting will cause no changes to the site, but it'll provide alternative fuel up under the front canopy and eliminate a Volvo or a Mercedes waiting in line with a...
Yeah, we understand that.
Okay.
You went on about some 1 gallon, you only asked for 1 gallon of water.
That's correct.
What does that mean?
What that means is, if we did not have a special use permit, our allowance to use out of the well is 1,624 gallons per day. According to the ordinance, that's 4.06 acres times 400 gallons per day per acre. That's what the ordinance says. So if you calculate 4.06 times 400, that equals 1,624. Well, we had proposed that we don't need a special use permit. The county made a decision and said we have to. Every step of this, historically, we've tried to comply, by the way, and that's another side issue, but we've tried to comply. We didn't want a special use permit, but we had to get it in order to get over it, so that we could prove our water usage. It was kind of a catch-22. So the 1 gallon we asked for made it 1,625. Now, we've never touched that 1 gallon. We've never used half of the water we can use without the special use permit. Now, this is important from the Albemarle County Law Handbook perspective. It's important from a legal perspective, but we have always chosen to comply. And so now we're just trying to get some additional flexibility that will not run our water up high, and not even if you impose, if you take the water use and divide by the number of pumps, if you take 383, again, using the very peak that only happened 1 week in 2 years, and divide by 7, that's 54.7 gallons per pump per day. Then you add 2 to it and multiply by 9, you're going to get 492. Well, that's only 30% of what's allowed by right. So again, even if you add a couple more, the extra hours on the store and the pumps together and use that calculation, you'll get mathematically 38%. And we really are talking about water here because that's what the special use permit amendment conditions, the conditions were intended to do, which is to prevent development from using more water than it's allowed to use. And by the way, we also have a flow restriction valve on the pump line. Even if the pump is left on 24 hours, 7 days a week, and operates fully, it can only pump actually just slightly over 1,600 because it's calibrated for a little over a gallon per minute, and there's only 1,600 minutes in a day. So it's physically impossible to exceed the limit. But we're so far below it. We're at 25 and 30, and even in the worst case, 40% if both of these things were granted. And that's what we're trying to prove here, and we have got the data to show it. So just to catch back up, I can take questions, and that's the extent of our application. We did have some wording in to try to update number 9, which references a plan, but we had a concept plan. It was used to develop this site plan. We have a zoning determination that says this site plan is in conformance with our special use permit. So we don't need to change that wording. We thought the county might want to, but actually leaving it as it is. So we're only talking about these two conditions, no changes to this, and that thing, okay?
My question is, you come with expansion, you wanted a ice cream store and a hair shop.
That was
Then now we want two conditions.
That's true.
Next month, will it be 3 more conditions added to it?
Well,
what is this, a trick way of going through the slow way instead of dumping it all on us at once?
Okay, that was what I was going to say next. When we originally applied, we always had a phase 2. It was made known at the time, it went to the ARB, we even submitted elevations.
So my question is,
Let me
if you're
finish.
still going for you don't have to go on and on, yes or no. It's a yes or no question.
Well, it's not, because under the county rules, you can ask for however many times you want to amend the
So that's what
application,
you're
they
saying.
can.
You're gonna be doing this amendment stuff every other week, like we've been going through. Every 3-4 months, we gotta go through this.
It's actually been a year.
Okay, was your phase 2 what you will ask from the planning commission and the board?
When, in
Just last year?
2016, we basically asked for phase 2.
And what was your answer?
Well, what happened with that was 2 things. One is, we were projecting more square footage with
I know,
water.
I'm very familiar, but what was the outcome of?
It was denied.
Right.
It was denied in 2016.
Okay.
This is not that.
Right, so let's talk about this.
Yes, that's what I've been trying to talk about. So,
So my question
but-
is, but is that kind of sneaky way for this to happen every other day?
well,
That's
here's,
the question.
well, there's 2 things that I'll tell you. I just passed around a handout that's 5 pages out of the Albemarle County Land Use Law Handbook published by Greg Camner. And in that, there's some arrows showing specific language. But conditions are not voluntary. In section 610, it states very clearly that associated with rezonings, conditions are proffered and voluntary. With special uses, they are not voluntary. And everybody says, well, you agreed to this, why do you come back and ask for them to be amended? Well, our number 1 goal is we had to get the store open, and we had to shrink the size to get that approved, and we did do it. Now we've proven it. So the water use is 25 or 24% of what we're allowed to use. So from a water usage aspect, our conditions are overly, this also says they must be reasonably proportional. Well, if we're not even using 3/4 of the water, how can it be proportional? So we don't want to challenge the rules. We're trying to comply with the rules. And let me finish one more thing. So we opened the store to prove it. We will not exceed the by right water, and it's physically impossible to, which is what I said. We've spent a great deal of money to comply. Both the site plan meets the county requirements. It's been challenged numerous times, but they are met. All of things are complied with. The site design is complied with in all the aspects. Now, there are 2 other special use permits that were issued during this whole time frame. For water use, same thing. One of them has this many conditions, 0. No conditions. It doesn't even state the amount of water in the special use permit letter. The other one has 1 condition. It says put a meter on it, but nobody reads it, nobody logs it. The county's never asked for the data to say how much water is that store using. So when you look at the preponderance of these 9 conditions and compare it to those special use permits, is ours reasonable? That's also in the county's own land use handbook. I just wanted to make that statement. And then, you know, most of these conditions, and you can understand where this comes from, were imposed and they had to do with neighbors being unhappy with our location. And again, they have a right to be unhappy, but it's not about zoning. It's about, that's a little bit on the politics. But, so the land use handbook and the 5 pages, you can read the whole thing online. We have had property owners, and they're here present tonight, that have never been satisfied. And even though we had meetings, we added things to the site plan, we have board on board, fence around the back, we have buffered plantings, we have greater setbacks on this particular development than are really required. We saved trees along the east side that were not required to be saved. Now, everybody can say that's not enough, and I'm not going to argue that point. But all of those things were done, and no one's ever said, well, that you did these things will support you. It's always been a one-way street.
It's the lie.
And,
Please don't say that.
well, it happened.
What that,
It's a one-way
So,
street.
let me ask
That
this.
just had to be-
Let me ask this.
Wait, let me
Nine
finish.
conditions, let me ask this. Nine conditions, how many have they violated?
I have 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
We have one person talking at a time, please.
Okay,
Wait,
so
we do need to let.
I know I do, but let me just
I know,
finish.
but it's repetitive a little bit.
Okay.
You can finish, but please let people ask questions.
Oh, and I will, and I want to open it up for any questions. I'm just saying that the decel lane, the traffic improvements, the entrance safety, all the things were addressed. At the time last year, we actually had 20-some pages of people that signed a petition that supported this project, but you never hear from those folks because they're out there, they're customers, but you never hear from them. And we're well below the water use, and that's really what this special use permit is about, both from a county conformance aspect, from a legal aspect, and I can't change that. Now, if there's things on the site that the adjacent neighbors are not happy about, and I agree, you need to change the rules, because the rules are still there. The next development can use the same rules and do the same development. And everybody is kind of honed in on, don't do this, but it's according to the rules. The lighting, everything is according to the rules. I'm saying the rules need to be changed.
But
If you want to be
excuse
more,
me, it's like the neighbor, one of the neighbors' businesses, they have a lot of music and noise. So we complain about the music and noise.
did they exceed the noise ordinance? Probably.
And so if the lights are shining in people's lights, and don't we have a right to complain? You say you've done a lot for the neighbors. You said you put up trees and you put up a wooden barrier.
They're on the sidewalk.
But where's the, you didn't put any trees up.
You didn't put any trees up.
No.
Just a tree. No, you didn't. You didn't put, you put
No
little trees in the
barriers.
front.
The stuff you said.
I didn't know
no
there were trees in the back.
No trees.
Across the back of the site, in the corner of your
No
house?
trees.
Nope. Okay, well, there's people that have been here from the county and done inspections, and the buffer trees in your corner, up against the corner of Freetown Lane are there, and they've grown 3 or 4 feet now. And if they get another 3 or 4 feet, it's even gonna block it more, but they are required to be planted at a certain size. And they're planted, I can't argue with you, but I can tell you, I've presented pictures of them before, and Mark Graham is here, or Bill Fritz is here, those trees are in existence, and they were buffer planted, so.
Can we get a questions, Joe?
Yeah, please.
So of the nine conditions, how many have you violated since being open?
How many have we violated of the 9
Correct.
conditions?
Correct.
Violations are not part of our application.
Of the 9 conditions that you had to operate under, how many have you violated?
None. There's no violations
So
on this
there- has
site
there-
right now.
Is
There's none.
overnight parking a condition?
Mr. Crutchfield,
Is
We can go-
overnight parking a condition?
there's 4 hours where customers can park on the lot.
Have you had
There are
overnight
no-
parking?
There's been no, go talk to the zoning department, is all I can tell you.
Exactly.
Part of where we're at has to do with your interaction too, so I can't really go there on a personal level.
Was there a chain put up?
No, has to be, there's a fuel truck that delivers fuel set on a
Have your pumps
computer.
been on when they weren't supposed to be?
Have the what?
Have the pumps been on when they weren't supposed to be?
When this store opened, those pumps were on for a year or something before, because it was never restricted. Pumps don't use water. They were never restricted, okay?
So-
There was
so
a complaint.
You've complied to all,
It was
Of your
complied
9
with as soon as
conditions.
zoning brought it.
you complied to all 9 conditions, and you're gonna sit here and lie in front of everybody.
Mr. Crutchfield,
That's
if you want to
crazy.
talk about this individual.
As an adjacent neighbor, when you talk about the well and the pump usage, I'm confused because of the well there. There's a light that's on sometimes, and then there's a light that's off.
A light on the pole?
On the meter reader or the well.
Okay.
When the light's on, does that mean it's working? Or when the light's off, does that mean it's working?
I'm not sure, but I'm not sure what it makes any
Because
difference.
sometimes it's on, sometimes it's off.
When the pump operates, water goes through the line and is measured in the meter.
So I'm just saying, the light's on sometimes, the light's off
I have
sometimes.
no idea.
I know you
The
don't.
pump at my house has a light it's a sewer pump. On the well pump, I'm not sure, it could be an electric light that indicates that the electricity is working, or it could be that the pump is pumping and it hasn't reached pressure yet.
I just
So
want to be clear
I've never been asked
that
that question.
the store has not been in compliance. In our negotiation with you, when you promised to work with us to try to block the lighting, you haven't done that. I'm going to tell you guys right now, there are no trees. There are 0 trees.
In your corner, there is no trees planted, in your corner.
There's no trees on the other side.
No, there was a
When you
requirement.
pointed to them, when you showed us where you thought trees were, there were no trees.
The trees in the corner towards your property was a protected buffer tree area. We were not allowed to cut trees on that strip. Now, I admit, the trees there aren't as good as what are on the other side that were planted. So if I had a choice between a planted buffer and a natural buffer, I'd always pick planted. But the county rules read that to protect the trees in the buffer strip.
It's
That's the way the rules
I
read.
just can't believe you're not going to be honest and tell us how many of the conditions you violated. So
I haven't
I think
violated.
I've made my point that you can't be trusted, use tricky language, and it bothers us. It bothers our family.
I apologize
And I
for
don't
that.
appreciate you kind of saying you're not going to operate those 4 extra hours, because we know that's not true. Everybody in here knows that's not true.
Okay, well, right now, there's been no night operation, but the way the conditions written.
I know there's
They
been
can
overnight
stay open
parking.
all night,
I
but
know
they
there's been
don't.
overnight parking.
They can stay open all night, but they don't, because there's no customers. It's all about the
Because
business.
people park over there overnight, I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
Can we, I'm sure other people, thank you for your comments, I'm sure other people have questions or comments. That's all on your Tom.
Yeah, the question I had is that, it seems to me with regard to the water uses, that the primary variable in any water uses is the number of your customers. So why should we not say, or look at this as that this was an adequate amount of water, but you had a bad business model, and you're not attracting customers that use the water? I mean, I have to look at this as from the CCA view, is that, for what you're asking, you accepted all these conditions. If we're going to look at a resolution from this committee, what benefit does this bring the community? I mean, you're talking about being open until 12:30 at night.
No, we haven't said, but that
Well,
would
you
be
said that before.
to
You said
allow.
you wanted to go from 12:30 to 4:30 with no usage. 12:30 to me is a fairly late hour. The station down here is not open until 12:30.
Now, right now, and you talked about the growth in Crozet, these conditions are forever. So is the other markets, and some of them close at 9, and we very well would close at 9 except for the pump issue. But the point here is, we don't know what the community do, but when Crozet and Old Trail specifically builds out, there's going to be more customers. Now, on football game nights, it stops at 10. Maybe the customers will stop at 10:30. Then fine, if there's no customers coming, they've locked their door.
But then it seems to me you should come back to us when you hit that limit.
Well,
Not
it's about water, and the water's not being used, and you can say what you want about the business model, but the store has to be successful, and it has been to an extent, but these, having staff in the store and can't unlock the door, that's
Well, again,
like,
that sounds like a management problem, not a,
well, you can't open the door because you're 16 hours, and you gotta cook before breakfast.
Again, that's something you should have thought about before you open the business.
No, what-
You're gonna open the door.
Well, but
Seems to me.
this is only about water.
Right, and it may be, but I think the one thing that the whole presentation was somewhere in there, you admitted to providing misleading information just so you could get the doors open and prove.
No, sir, there was never
I
any.
think those were words out of my mouth. Maybe I misheard it, but you said, well, we submitted that because we had to get the doors open.
We did, but we made very clear at every step that we
And
had
that to
to
me
apply.
implies
We had to apply.
misleading from the beginning, which I just think is, it's very difficult to trust that, because that's the statement you made. I didn't make that. I'm just saying that maybe you should restate that. Maybe there's some things that you can do, but that's disappointing to hear.
Well, the statement that I made is we made clear from the very beginning the size of the development we were seeking. And it was cut down by the county action. We've always made clear that once we prove, in comparing our original numbers to what we actually use, instead of using about half, we use half of half. We've always made clear that we'd be back. And we never withheld. Now, if we withheld that information and just waited, but no, it's no surprise. You could look in the county records And you can look on the county plans that were submitted, we always made clear. And when I say, it's not misleading, if they required me to do something like apply for a special use permit, we applied. We objected strenuously, but what we never did is get into any kind of legal fight, we complied. And when I said we had to, we were stuck with, we couldn't get approved unless we did this. That's how the county rules work. You have to comply. That's not misleading.
It's just the way you said.
Yeah, I didn't mean that because we met, there are
Am I the only one that heard
emails,
that?
there is a record in the file with emails that say, we're doing this, we don't agree with it, but we have to do it. We have to prove ourselves. We have to get our doors open. No matter what size we can, as long as we're open, we can prove that we're not going to use. Now, very
Is that
frankly,
normal practice?
let me tell you about.
Practice? Do other businesses do it that way?
Well, it's not normal to have to apply for water use, but let me note one other thing. There is a store up on 29, and it's at the airport. Okay, is it normal? There's only 3 of these in the county, and the other 2 got no conditions, no limits, and no questions. They were granted. We were the only one that had none conditions imposed. Is that normal? We don't think it's reasonable.
And just a follow-up.
I mean, and those are in the record, and those were submitted.
You mentioned the phase 2, but you withdrew that, so.
Because ARB required us to. They required us to show it in a dashed line, and they required us to submit an elevation of that future building, because they didn't want to look at part of it without seeing what the future could hold. We submitted it, they reviewed it, and then the county staff decided that if it was shown, it would imply some sort of approval. So we, based on their,
I just need clarity on, because I understand.
yeah, and Bill is here, I don't know that he was the direct one, but we did remove it, and ARB did not approve, but they approved the original building with that being a cohesive next step. And there's in our analysis, there's many, many pages of this.
So is that in writing that it was approved with the understanding that there would be?
No,
Is that what you're saying?
It was approved, the building we have built now was approved after they saw the full build out, but we had to withdraw and say, they said no approval of the full build out because county zoning had the issue about showing it on the site plan. But it was submitted, it went to an ARB meeting. But ARB is a separate, they're concerned about architecture and that sort of thing.
No, I'm familiar with that.
But there's a store up on 29 near the airport, Exxon in front of Forest Lakes, and when we did our study in 2008, it used 1,400 plus gallons, 1,500 gallons per day to operate, but it's on public water, so we could get that information. That store in 2011 got remodeled, no, 2012. I pulled the more recent water data. That store uses less than half of that, like 450 gallons a day, because now they use low-flow toilets, and their cooking was changed by remodeling. The county office building changed all their plumbing fixtures. The toilets, which are probably your biggest water use, don't use hardly anything. It's illegal to have a high-volume toilet. They were outlawed by EPA. That's what's happened between the old stores and our new store. And that's legitimate. It just happened as a matter of climate. You know, you don't use water now. You get water saving. We use 3-minute washes, low-flow toilets. It would never use. Even if you flushed, I even did it in a analysis, if you flushed all day long and had wine at your bathroom and kept flushing and flushing, the 1/10 of a gallon on a urinal, you could do that all day long. The 1/10 of a gallon times every 3 minutes, and it would never exceed. Yes, sir.
You've made the point a couple of times that this is all about the water.
Yes, sir.
In condition number 2, you state the limit of the water consumption. Would you be agreeable, based on your experience, to reduce that limit if it were possible to do so?
If we reduce the limit, we'd be in our by right category, and there would be no special use permit. There's only 1 gallon that was awarded to us. So if we're less than that 1 gallon, then there's no enabling regulation to allow the special permit to exist. That's the reason we asked for 1 gallon, because we didn't think we've proven we don't need it.
I guess what appears to me is that by justifying this usage rate, you're opening the door to future expansion that you may indeed come back and request.
And you know what? The application that was submitted a year ago, the way the Albemarle County zoning ordinance reads, you can wait 12 months and submit the same exact application, or you can make substantive changes and resubmit. We haven't done that.
I'm talking about intent, not what the.
I know, but well, believe me, when you have to meet the ordinance requirements and put in the infrastructure that the county requires and build a building that's suitable to the ARB, which is not a simple, inexpensive building, getting longer hours of operation is really important. Getting gas sales is really important. And businesses pay tax and real estate tax, and they serve customers. If you don't have competition, your gas prices in rural areas goes up. I mean, that's a known fact.
I mean, the obvious complication with your station versus other, I'm not just talking about Crozet and Crozet, is that you are adjacent to a neighborhood. The rest of them have agreed in their hours and where they are to operate within the confinements that well, the Dairy Queen, the one.
They're in the growth area.
I'm saying hours of operation and their impact on the neighborhood, on the community. We look at it from a community point of view and your impact on the community versus your value to the community.
Okay.
Well, I think that's the problem.
When there's problems with
that
noise,
that the other ones don't have, or that the other ones have complied with conditions to make it acceptable.
they
to
have no
neighbors.
conditions.
Well, of course it is. Dairy Queen stays open until 11. That was part of their operating agreement.
They
can't stay open.
They don't have a special use permit.
But I'm telling you, they don't stay open all night.
Under what agreement?
Under the agreement that they made with the county.
Under what? I know of no such agreement, and I know Fraser White who opened it. It might be
down there at
one.
midnight and you'll see it's closed.
But bottom line is, you're using water as some sort of loophole. This wasn't the whole mediation and the court, that was a way to solve this problem so that you didn't have to keep coming back. And you guys agreed to it, but you keep coming and you keep harassing us with this.
I'm going to say one thing for the record. This property owner has never filed any suit or been a party against the county in a court. That has never been this property owner. It's a matter of public record. The only lawsuit that went to court was filed by the other store owner against Albemarle County. We didn't file against the county.
Let's look at the whole integrity of that case and what you represent with that.
Well, this is
I mean,
the
that
integrity.
doesn't put you in good light either.
Well, sir, it's the public record is clear.
Doesn't matter, it's
That
all
was
about
Sue versus
character,
Albemarle
integrity,
County,
and being a
not
good
us.
neighbor. And not keep coming back here harassing us with this stuff.
Okay.
You know daggone well, you're not gonna use those 4 hours just kinda every once in a while. You're gonna use them every single day.
So I guess the question.
And you're trying to do a truck stop. Let's just say, that's the bottom line. You're trying to bring all sorts of people into our community, threatening our safety.
We've proven it's not a truck stop.
But it will
There's
be.
only one fuel station back there we're asking for. Yes, sir.
So question, clearly, and I know technically the permit and the conditions is about water.
All the other uses are by right.
Practically, a number of the conditions and concerns are about nuisance to neighbors.
Okay.
You're asking for an extended period of operation. Is there anything in your request that includes any mitigation for those extended hours of operation to try to mitigate the impacts that we're all talking about, potential impacts to neighbor, number one?
You bring up a very good point.
Can I just finish?
Yeah.
Is there anything in your request that further mitigates it, or even if it's not in your current request, is there anything reasonably that could be done to try to help mitigate the potential noise, light, late night disturbance to neighbors?
And I would add, what do you want from us tonight?
Well, she's just doing
I'm
it's
just-
up to
No, I
us.
can answer that.
It's up to us to decide whether we want to say anything to the board of supervisors or not. So can we
I would
come back to the
invite anybody that wants to, and I will set aside the time to take this site plan and advise you what was done to mitigate impacts to neighbors. And I would invite you to do that, and I will meet you at the site and go
I'm
through
not
that.
saying now, I'm saying for
I know,
this
but-
change, is there any further mitigation that can reasonably be done? Or that you-
Well, there might be, and I'll tell you one of the problems here. One of the problems is, and Mr. Crutchfield's here, and I've been to his house, and he's been generous enough taking pictures from his side. As you meet with neighbors that seemingly can't be fully satisfied, what happens is, they never say things like, well, if you would get those lights fixed, we'll support you. That's never said. A carrot would be better than a stick. And whatever we've done, board-on-board fence, shielding, buffer plantings, setbacks, tree protection, we've done all those things, and some of them were absolutely not required. But we did it to mitigate impacts on the neighbors. They're here at this meeting telling you that those things didn't mean anything to them. We've never gotten, it's always been, when I say a one-way street, from my perspective, I've met with property owners who actually said to me, and a fella over on Freetown Road said to me, he threatened me. And things like that came up, and I said, sir, I'm just trying to meet the rules and see if I can satisfy you. And at some point, if you can never satisfy someone, where is it that they step up and say, well, that fence, we didn't have to put that fence up. We could have put a cheap type of fence. We put board on board, the most expensive type. You know, it's the kind that air can flow through, and it's the most, ARB likes it. We also have to satisfy ARB. So we have done things, and I truly would invite you. I'll meet with you individually. I'll meet you on the site. There are things that were incorporated.
Anybody here, come on, we'll show you too.
I actually remember, Joe, you coming to our yard, standing in our yard, looking towards the site, seeing the lights shining at us, and you said, you're right. Those lights are shining right at you.
That was.
And you never did anything. You took pictures. You said you
She
agreed
said our
with us.
house, she said our house
It was
set
14.
weird.
Right. What
It
you
was
said was
14.
the way our house set was the problem.
Well, let me tell you what happened with that. It was
Never
14
did
months
anything.
ago. That was 14 months ago. It was in preparation to our application in 2016. Had we done the building that we asked to be done on that side of the site, the view from their house would have been totally changed, because that building was 2 stories and it would have blocked that side of the site. It would have controlled noise, it would have blocked the light, and we were going to take that fixture, that particular one pole light, and I have it on my computer, we were going to move it and put in a shorter pole light.
You didn't.
But when we got denied, nothing got done. When we got denied, why would we go out there and change what's there?
Any
If we're in
type of
conformance?
mitigation. You did not come to us with any type of trying to work with us about any changes, any architectural things, anything that would fix any of the complaints we had. You never did, Joe. You're acting like a victim. Someone threatened you. I don't know.
Excuse me, but I have never met with you. I got a letter from you.
Yes, ma'am. What's your name?
My name is Merlin White. I live on the other side of them.
Yes, on the right.
Yes.
Yes.
I never met with you. No, I never talked to you. There's never been any mitigating, there's never been any compromising, there's never been any talk with me.
No, in
When I was there,
in 2010, I actually met with.
I have never got to say anything.
Okay.
About the gas station, the noise, the fumes, the inconvenience.
The fire that happened at the well.
I mean, I said I wouldn't mind, talking to the Sprouses about what's going on at the gas station, because I haven't gotten a word in. You've never spoke to me. You told me when I saw you that you wanted to meet with me, but at the time I was out of town. So I've never gotten any kind of, so when you say the neighbors, and I haven't spoke to you, and this has been going on for 10 years, and I've never spoke to you at all. So you don't know what I feel or what I think about
I
you.
will be happy. It extends to you. I will come to your house. I'll do it after dark. I'll do whatever I can do.
When you say trees and fences and all this stuff that you've complied with, I haven't seen any of that, and I live there.
Well, I have the site plan, and we can meet on the site and go through that. And when I originally met with Ms. Haskins, Mr. Crutchfield wasn't in that meeting, but I met with Ms. Haskins, and I thought you were included in that, and I'll go and check but we're talking 2010 maybe? 2010, I
But
came to your
it's been
house.
that long, and
Yes,
you still can refer to all that was done and all that was said. But you're referring to one neighbor, you haven't said, you said the neighbors.
Yeah. Well,
And
there's
I am
many on
one
the
of
other
them.
side. I wasn't meaning that to dismiss you at all. I apologize.
But even back in 2010, when we did meet, the things you said you were going to do, never happened. So you can talk about all the meetings, but nothing you said happened.
Other question?
Yes, sir.
I was just going to make a statement, which is, from just listening to all this, having been around when it was going on years ago, we're not 29. And that's part of the issue is we're a community that cares a lot about these people in this room. Like, we're that community. We're not, look at these people. I'm blown away at how many people are showing up at this meeting. So to me, my opinion is the best strategy is not to fight or argue about this point, but to stop for 1 minute and think, what is the best thing I can do to have this community embrace us? And I know you think you've tried, but it doesn't sound like that tonight. And I don't even have a dog in this fight. I live really close by.
Yeah.
It's a store I wasn't in favor of, I'll just tell you that. And I would say most people in this community are not. So to me, we want businesses that want to be a part of the community we all care about. That try desperately to think about what matters. And I'm very involved in the downtown area. We want to keep development off 250. We're trying to grow this really cool community in Crozet. That isn't what we want. I'm sorry to tell you that. So you know that, and I know you're here for a specific reason, but I just have to say it's sort of like exhausting my ears. I think we should just, it's clear you should take what you're hearing here and let it wash over you and think about how you can maybe make people in this community embrace what you're doing at its current state, not at what you're hoping for, because we kind of see that as a greedy play, but as your current state, just try hard to make it better today. And then come back. That was
Has anybody noticed any difference since Saturday night?
Well,
no, I mean, I'm asking you honest questions. Yes.
Yeah, that's not embracing us, by the way. But I would sort of say, what would you like us to do? What could we do to make you happy?
That's what I'm asking about.
Well,
has anybody noticed any difference between the last few nights? It's been a very substantial difference.
Aren't you asking to turn those pole lights on for another 4 hours?
No, we actually are looking at how to separately switch
Okay,
and turn them
yeah,
off.
second question, where is Jeff's Traps tonight?
Michelle is here, Jack's working.
You know, if someone can't stand up in front of the community and put their name behind what they're proposing to do, I mean, I don't see how we can support it at all.
They've always
Because this has been a constant thing. No, they send you here, they pay you to come here instead. And why can't he stand up and put his name on it? To me, this is just, it's ridiculous.
Well,
it's ridiculous because he knows the community is against it. And he doesn't have the guts to stand up there and do what you're doing. He pays you to do it instead.
Well, there's several reasons for that. And it shouldn't be that this is a long-standing family that's operated Brownsville Market for many years. And the history of the county, I'll tell you one fun fact, the history of the county, when has it been that one business financially hired attorneys to fight another business to keep them from opening? This is the only case that's ever happened in Albemarle County.
Just a point of order. Morgan, we've met our 45 minutes, and two, we're beyond the point of order.
Yeah, okay, I agree.
So I would motion that unless somebody has new information, Dave, that we move forward.
Any other, so I'll take that, any other comments?
I would just suggest that Meg has a very good point.
Yeah.
I feel we need a resolution against it.
This is tentatively on planning commission agenda for December 5th. So that's fast.
Can I just get, I'm not overly familiar with the plot of land or who lives around it. Can I just get a sense of how many houses are truly adjacent to this property and just sort of where, I don't know where you live.
Here you go.
You should go on. This is property. This is Nancy's yard. This is F&R. This is the trust part. This is Renata for regular. These Freetown Lane that we refer to as down this little lane, they're back here.
And 13 houses.
And then Ms. Haskins and Bill.
Mr. Bird, I
They're
would
driving
love to
right
do
there. They're
that
right
with
here.
you. Make sure you get correct information. You gotta make sure if she's gonna share, let another side do it too.
Okay, so approximately how many houses did you say?
I mean, it's about 6.
2 on our side, and then maybe 9,
That's the property.
10
So,
on the other side, so maybe 10 to 12.
so
And this is a neighbor that's been here for quite some time, by the way, right?
One neighborhood.
Well, y'all can send your input. Bill Fritz is the spokesperson. He's bfritz@albemarle.org. He's in contact. He has the file on it. And I will just reinforce that the special use permit is a water usage permission, and what the existing development is in conformance with county standards.
So thank you, Joe. I guess what I'd like to do.
I was just going to ask Bill to get back to CCAC with some follow-up information about what I think I heard correctly at CCA last week, that you felt you were not allowed to reduce the lights or make changes because what was written down on the site plan was what you were required to do. And I think I would like to get a ruling about that from Bill, are those maximum types of things. So if they want to.
I can answer that right now.
If they want to plant more trees, they were willing, they're able to do that. If they want to shield lights instead of just having down lights that also go 100 yards in each direction, then they have the right to do that if they choose, or not.
Right, there is no ordinance requirement that they have any lights. But if they do have lights, those lights have to meet the regulations for spillover and design.
Which is a maximum. Which
Right,
they do.
right, so it's
So
a
they can
maximum, so
always
they can
have-
always do lesser than that.
And I know
The
there
same
was-
with the trees, they can always, there's a minimum, they can always go over with the trees.
And we requested through zoning a couple of years ago, a rheostat on the canopy lights because of the LED being so blinding. And that has never happened either. So that's just the kind of thing that can be done, has been requested through me, and I've passed as numerous things from the neighbors over the years. So they're all on file with Lisa.
And Bill,
You can get those.
can you just touch base briefly on the likely schedule forward in terms of planning board of supervisors?
Sure, yeah. I'm Bill Fritz, if no one knows, if you haven't met me before, but that knows to be for a lot of you. This project will go before the planning commission. Right now we have it scheduled for December 5th. If you have any comments, and I know you sent me some, if you have comments that you want to add, or this group has a resolution, send them to me, bfritz@outlaw.org, and I'll make sure it's included. Once it goes to the planning commission holds a public hearing, staff will make a recommendation, the planning commission will hear that, the applicant will make a presentation, members of the public can obviously come, we welcome you to come, and say anything you want to say. The planning commission will hear the item and they'll take a vote. That vote's a recommendation which will get forwarded on to the board of supervisors. The board of supervisors meeting is not set yet. We typically don't do that until the planning commission meeting has occurred. If you have comments and you don't get them to me in time for the planning commission, and you get them to me after the planning commission, that's fine too. We'll make sure the board of supervisors gets those. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer.
Bill, has the staff taken a position?
No, this is part of the review process. We will take a position when we write the report and release that to the planning commission. That's when we take our position.
And approximately when do you think that'll happen?
A week, we typically do that a week ahead. I have a bunch of you on an, or I shouldn't say a bunch, I can't remember how many it is, maybe 6, on an email distribution list. If you send me an email, I'll add you to the email distribution list, and when the staff report is prepared and ready to go, I'll let you know, and I'll let you know how you can download it and view it and everything. So as soon as that's done, I'll send it out. We release it at the same time we give it to the planning.
And I'll make sure that when the staff report comes out, it goes to all the CCA members and then notify CCAC list. Thanks.
I can do that. You want me to just, I can add the whole CCA list? Sure. Okay, I can do that, no problem.
Bill, excuse me, I don't know if this is out of line, but we have the two parties that are disagreeing not only on principle but facts. And would it be possible, both sides have said they're willing to get together for a meeting? And I would think it would be helpful if someone from the committee here or from your office could attend that. And we could just,
call us.
Some of this could probably be knocked out because it's a lot of harsh words going back and forth. But in person, we can find out what's right and what isn't.
Yeah, we can, we've on projects, we've gone out into the field with people, we've made meeting space available in the county office building, so the information can be shared to set up meetings, and you guys get in touch with us.
Could you give them each your number so they could try to get in touch with you? Because I would expect they want to try to set that up.
You have your email.
You have it, yeah. Anybody wants a card, just raise your hand, I'll bring you a card.
So I guess just to, thanks, Bill.
Sure.
To move forward, I think it's up to the group to decide, do we want to say anything about this proposal prior to the planning commission meeting? Do we feel like we need more time to consider a resolution? I'm open to suggestions. I guess I would just ask that any resolution you do, you try to fairly succinctly get to that, because we do have one wire on the agenda, and I try to leave some time for that.
goes to the commission before.
Yes,
It
it
goes-
goes, it's on the 5th, and it's very helpful to have, if if the desire of the group is to have something, it's very helpful to have it. And commissioners we get stuff the day of, and we always try to read it, but it's nice when it can be in our packets, which means Bill has to have it.
Yeah, let's do a resolution.
Do we have a,
Well, I mean, it would seem to me from the discussion, I mean, as far as the CCAC and master plan, I think what's been raised, the cogent point that I've heard raised, is what the position that we've had all along to limit development, and then you want to say along 250. It seems to me this is an expansion of what we didn't want to happen on 250, which was to have, additional business, 24-hour, blah, 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 et cetera. So, I mean, in that respect, I think a motion or a resolution of non-support would be consistent with the master plan. That's just my view.
I agree 100%. I mean, we can dust off the last one we did against this, because it's just a party that has zero interest in working with the community and being a good part of the community. I mean, they act in bad faith consistently, so I don't see why we shouldn't just dust off the last resolution we had against them.
And I recommend we just make a motion to that effect, and then people, if they don't want to support it, they don't have to support it.
if people want to make a motion, they can make a motion for any resolution they want to state.
Did you make a motion?
No, I'm just saying, put it before a motion comes in.
John came closer.
But I was giving you the reason I felt
Make
that
a
we
motion
could
that
support it.
we make a resolution to tell them no. As simple as that. That we as a community are against any modification to any of these uses, be it number 5, 6, or 9.
I think we should include in the resolution, the reason is that we feel it's not consistent with the master plan, in the view of the master plan to limit development along 250. I think you have to have a cogent reason that we're presenting to the board, what the planning commission.
Yeah, I agree with
Okay,
that.
wait, do I have a second to the motion that was?
He didn't really make the motion, he
It did.
just sort of made.
Right, the motion, did somebody second?
Do you want to accept his conditions?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we got a motion and an amendment. Do I have a second?
I'll put it better.
I second the motion.
Do I have a second of that amended motion?
I do.
All right. Any more discussion?
Is there a possibility to incorporate in our resolution something along the spirit of we would like to encourage all parties to open channels of communication and
I would just like to say, on their behalf, I mean, they've just been engaging with these people for so long. I don't want to put them through any more discussions.
I think the fact of the matter, Sean, is if they do, and there's a resolution before that, they can contact Dave, and then we can, we don't even, obviously if there's an agreement, then we can not even present the resolution at that time, if there's an agreement between us. But I think this should change.
Any other discussion on the motion? I guess I have one point I'd suggest, again, as a suggested amendment to the resolution, would be also to say, while we oppose, because we don't think it's consistent with the master plan, if the planning commission is going to, and the board consider it at all, that it should only be on the condition of additional mitigation for the noise, potential noise, disturbance, light, that those factors should be looked at seriously. Frankly, in any event, under current operations.
Yeah.
So just some statement saying that,
Welfare, because you have gas being.
that there should be further mitigating measures should be looked at, whether it's.
Don't say whether,
No, I'm just saying whether it's.
You don't have to say.
Okay. So
Negative environmental impact.
would you be willing, is that an acceptable amendment to that motion?
I'll second that too.
All right. Any other discussion about that motion? Basically, resolution not support for reasons of limiting development of 250, not because.
Will you circulate that and?
Yeah, I'll circulate it before it's finalized. And then this addition about suggesting further mitigation measures. Any other discussion on that motion?
If there's anything circulated, please reply only to Dave, not to everybody.
Yeah, but my goal here would be I'll draft this up based on what I heard. I'll send it to all you guys, give comments, send it back to me, I'll finalize wording.
And then send out final.
Yes.
So moved.
Any other second? Any other discussion?
You're asking us to vote on something we haven't seen yet.
You're voting on the intention, on as you're hearing it, and we're gonna wordsmith it, and then I'm gonna send out a draft. And if you have comments, you can comment on it. But it'll include those 3 points. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? So moved. Joe, thank you.
Thank you.
We have, yes, please, we have about 10 minutes left, bear with us. The DCI, Pat Root is here from the DCI. The DCI would like to apply, and please, if we just be quiet, to give us 10 minutes.
I'm happy to
Jump in.
take it. Okay, so, thank you for staying. I will be speak to this as quickly as I can. DCI wants Crozet to be a vibrant commercial district and a place people want to visit. I think you've heard from our board president, the spirit, Nick Holden, of what we intend for Crozet, and our treasurer and secretary, Brendan Plants, is also here. To help further that, we have incorporated and are filing for nonprofit status. Our mission and information is on our website at Downtown Crozet Incorporated, downtowncrozet.org. One of the two. Brenda and I wanted to see what the Main Street program had to offer, so we attended a workshop about creating downtown events. And what we found is other communities that are trying to accomplish what we're accomplishing here. So there's this tremendous network of people and resources available through the Main Street program. So there are 29 Main Street programs and 16 Main Street commercial district affiliates in Virginia and over 2,000 nationwide. Main Street believes that the health of the community relies on the health of the downtown area. The program emphasizes community-based revitalization, focusing on helping downtown neighborhoods create inviting spaces to make residents and visitors feel that they belong, and then revitalize or strengthen the downtown district's economy. Community engagement is key to the program's success, and it's organized around 4 points: economic vitality, design, promotion, and organization. And the strategies that are developed through the program are done around those 4 points. So we took this back to DCI last week on Thursday and decided we would be interested in becoming a commercial district affiliate. And are coming here before this group to ask that you endorse our becoming an affiliate. The difference between an affiliate and Main Street program is related to our corporate status or our town status. Since we're not a town and we're not a city, this program was originally designed for cities and towns. And we're a census designated place.
Romantic.
A town by any other name.
But in their wisdom, Main Street has recognized that these principles can be applied to localities other than, I'm doing it, I promise, other than cities and towns. So one of the things we're doing is asking you to adopt the resolution that's before you to allow us to become a Main Street affiliate. The reason we're asking you to do this now is because there's a new grant program that is available for commercial district affiliates for the first time. And it's available and due December 1st. And it's eligible to Main Street affiliates. So DHCD understood our situation and suggested that if CCAC could adopt the resolution contingent upon the board later endorsing our participation, that they could accept our application. And so we're really interested in asking your support in that. The resolution, or the application, it will be for up to $7,000. It'll fund nonprofit organizational development, work plan and budget development. We're interested in looking at branding, marketing, economic restructuring, strategic planning, and case support. Not doing all that, but developing a work plan to accomplish it. It's only $7,000. And then bringing in consultant services to help accomplish that. The application, the resolution that goes with the application may need to be modified a little bit to comply with the county format and to get clarification on whether or not DCI as a corporation is going to be the recipient of the funding, or if the county is the applicant. It has to go through the CAM system, which is the DHCD's computer application system. We're not clear on whether or not our nonprofit can use it or not, but I'm confident that we can work out those details between now and the time the application is due. DCI is writing the grant. There's no financial obligation incurred by the county. The only thing would be that we'd ask for assistance through the Economic Development Office. And are there any questions?
What are the benefits to Crozet and to the DCI of being a Main Street affiliate? What do you get from it?
Well, what we get is a lot of resources and access to information and access to the network of people who are doing what we're doing now in trying to create revitalization. The workshop that we attended was for how to plan events, community events. And we heard from different people about what they do and how they do it and what their ideas are. One of the communities has a Bring Your Butts Downtown, which is a barbecue event. So they just talked, and I don't know that we're going to do that, but you know, there's just some creative ideas on how to do things and how to bring business here. I'd encourage you all to look at the Main Street website. I think they've circulated that. The other thing we're obligated to do is to go to a couple of workshops a year and develop our strategies around these points that they identify as critical to improving downtown revitalization through economic vitality, design, promotion, and organization. So we get information.
Is there a town or an area you found similar to Crozet that may be a couple of years ahead of where we are, so we could go see what it may look like a Middleburg or something like that? Or
I know Lynchburg is one.
Stanton wasn't it?
Waynesboro
is a Main Street town, fully accredited Main Street town.
Well, they're actually in a film. They're not on the list of. I know you've said that, but I'm not finding that on the website.
Well, they advertise that on their website. They say they are.
Well, they are a town. They may be an affiliate. They may be working for it. Standardsville is a good place to visit. They've got private or streetscape. But I don't know that would be the best model for us to.
Waynesboro has done a lot of work on their downtown.
Yeah.
Waynesboro has,
Yeah.
Stanton has, Lynchburg has, Northern Virginia, but that's not really something we necessarily model ourselves after.
So our time is short. There's a request for a resolution supporting the DCI's becoming this Main Street affiliate. I guess any other discussion amongst the group here?
And I'd be happy to come back and do a presentation on Main Street to give you more information. We can always stop it if you don't want to.
Dave, I see no downside of this kind of.
All we're asking is to approve, and so
Yes.
I would move.
Yes, you support our becoming an affiliate, and then support in putting the application through.
Like I said, I move.
I second it.
Any other discussion?
I thank you for doing this. It's great.
Oh, it's exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Oh,
really
it
is.
is. Oh, always good.
There's just tremendous
Motion and
potential.
second.
Goal point.
All right. So motion and discussion to support that resolution as drafted. All in favor?
Aye.
As drafted, subject to modification from the
Subject
county.
to-
Missing W's. I'm going to send Dave a link of to the PDF of this Small Town Big Ideas, which is like a book about this thick. But in there are about 300 case studies of things of all different sizes, and many of them who have succeeded have referred to this program in different ways. And we talked about it a few years ago and didn't act on it then. So I'll be sure to get that out to everybody, because it's lots of good inspiration in there.
Other than that, I think we actually did it. Any other announcements?
Thank you very much.
Pat, thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you, everybody. And please help us get out of here by 9. Thank you.
Are we meeting next
Right now.
So I can learn how to do it. My oldest wants to learn how to do it, my wife doesn't know how, so I'm going to teach myself.